welcome to the Shepherd's Rest Doc Talk. This is episode 180A.
I'm Cam and this is Julie. This week we are looking at Exodus 35:1 to 38:20. It is shorter because we have an extra month on the Hebraic calendar. So we have an Adar 2, which means this year there's only one double portion. I love it when that happens. And this is not it. So we get a shorter
portion.
Yes, we get a shorter portion this week.
All right, if you'd like to check out some previous years, they would be 35 A and B and 88 A and B.
Yes, and last year there is none for this week, the next week, or the next week, because we were in Israel at that time, and we just thought, you know what, no reason to stress, let's just go do our thing in Israel. And so we missed, so you're not going to have any in the 100s.
For
the next 3 weeks. Yeah. So anyway, let's jump on this. You know, had I really looked at that before, I might have had a different discussion plan today, but we're going to do this anyway. I found something that piqued my interest, and it had to do, well, two things. One that had to do with the wood. So we'll just start with that. You know, it says in chapter, let's go read in 35, verse 7. And this is where listing the things that the people are going to bring. It says, and ram skins dyed red, and fine leather, and acacia wood. And then it goes on with other things. Well, so they are presenting from their own items. You know, they're not out harvesting. They weren't out told to cut trees down or anything like that. And I'd heard before that there really weren't acacia wood, you know, there weren't trees just growing up everywhere to go cut this stuff down. They had to brought it from Egypt. I don't know if that's true or not. Just an interesting thought.
Never even thought about that.
However, it is said that the burning bush was acacia wood, which then puts that out in the wilderness. And not only out in the wilderness, it puts it actually there at Mount Sinai.
Yeah.
So who knows? What's to say there wasn't an acacia forest?
Right.
I'm just saying that I don't really know. That's midrash. There's nothing that says which way it is.
Or maybe that's why it was so astounding, because it was an acacia bush.
Yeah, exactly. Because they don't have them. And so my thought was, so let's just say they have this wood, right?
Okay.
Okay. When you start really looking at the size of the wood, I started thinking, so who's just walking around with like a 10-foot plank of wood?
Oh.
Yeah. Because, you know, the boards that are used inside the tabernacle are basically 10 feet high.
Huh.
So I was like, well, I don't know, honey. I just feel like we need to grab that wood, put it in the car. I just started thinking about the real logistics of carrying this wood out. Like, I'm going to build something. Oh, we're just living in tents. Wouldn't it be interesting if part of building the booths and not a tent is because they had more of or wood that they built something, not so much like we think of a tent. I have no idea. I'm just throwing this out there, food for thought, but I just found it interesting when looking at the wood. Now, here's the other part of that. When you start to think about the wood, so we have the ark, right? And it's, you know, the ark, the other pieces of furniture, and you have maybe it's 2.5 cubits by 3 cubits by 1 cubit. So it's smaller, but it's tall and it's wide. So they're not using a sheet of plywood. You know, it's not one. I don't know. In my head, when you think about them building the ark, it's like a piece of wood. You know, like you'd see a carpenter just building big pieces of wood.
Yeah.
Could be, but there's nothing that says it is. And then I started thinking, oh, is this a picture? Is this a picture of the fact that, could it be that people brought pieces of wood and then they built the wood, they put the wood together, so now you have broken pieces of wood placed together, but it's okay because it's covered with gold.
Yeah.
So instead of it
like
looking...
a picture of us.
Yes, and instead of it being like wood, now it really is looking more like the ark, as in Noah's ark. Wood put together, pieced together. And again, I don't know. I just started thinking, God, there are those similarities between Noah's Ark, which preserved life, and now we have the Ark of the Covenant, which preserves life. So I was like, well, wouldn't that be interesting if it is? And then here's the other thing. That means it wasn't just one family that brought this. And you have multiple people. Could it be that a part of all 12 tribes
brought some wood?
Have some wood that's building to make the ark? So my mind just started going all these interesting places when I started thinking about how the wood was used. Now, I want you to look at the idea, the way the words are used. So inside the dwelling place, so the ark, not the ark, the tent of meeting, right? It speaks of the boards, okay? It only speaks of boards. And I'm going to read that really quick, and it's in 36. Verse 20 says, and for the dwelling place, he made boards of acacia wood, standing up, all right? And that's what talks about the really tall boards. So in the tent of meetings, they use boards, okay? Again, is this one singular board? Somebody's got the basically 10-foot board? And if so, they're not little tiny boards, because the boards together are making, well, I have it right here. They're 15 feet high. I said 10. That was my bad. They're 15 feet high, 10 cubits, and they're 2.25 wide. Okay? So that's really big.
Yeah.
Again, that's basically
a tree.
Yeah, could everyone bring their
Tree
trees? So is the board made up of other pieces? Like you have columns that you may see, big columns that actually are made, or is it one piece? I don't know which. Just thrown out there, food for thought. You know, there's different interpretations on it. But again, it's a big board. So, but we have boards that are inside. Okay, well, when I looked at board, and then I started thinking about column, because see, at the doorway, there are columns. They're not called boards, they're columns. But there doesn't seem to be like, we know the height, but it doesn't seem to say like, this is the size of the column. There are columns on the outside of the outer courts, okay? So then I started thinking about column, and it hit me. Wait a minute. In Revelation 3, Church of Philadelphia, they go in, and what are they called? Yeah, they're called the columns or the pillars, not the boards.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh. So I went and looked up, where's the first time pillars used? A column.
Okay.
How about in Exodus 12?
Okay.
So, or no, excuse me, 13. The pillar. God is the pillar.
Ah.
So he's the pillar
we're
that
little
leads.
pillars.
Yes. So I thought, oh, how interesting. And only that, the pillars are used on the outside, and the pillars are used where you would go in. They're entryways. They're what hold up the outside. It's literally the security to the entrance, and the security, well, to the entrance all the way around. I was like, doesn't that make sense? That, or to me it does, that as in Revelation, us going into the house of the Lord and being the pillars.
Yeah, we're like the board.
Yes.
Or not the boards.
No,
the columns.
we're like the columns that are building the outside, and he dwells inside.
Yeah.
And I was
Pretty
like,
cool.
well, so in New Jerusalem, when we're, hopefully, if I'm understanding it correctly, we're giving towards the building of that, we're building the outside because he's got the inside taken care of.
Oh, yeah.
He's
yeah.
the one. Messiah says he's going and building the rooms, right? He's the one that builds the inside.
So how do we build that?
I don't know. I would say by standing tall, walking in his ways, because if he's the column.
So our deeds.
Yes.
Are what build.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, that so goes with what we're going to talk about in mine.
And to be honest, if you even think about the scripture that talks about your deeds go through the fire, right? And it comes out way. Let's stick all the words together and do one word. Hay, stubble, and wood, or the gold, silver, and precious jewels. You know, I mean, again, it's not a salvation issue. We got to get that Greek mindset out that says everything's, you know,
Heaven or hell.
Yeah, heaven or hell, saved or unsaved. That no, right. This is, yeah, you're saved. What you gonna do with it? Yeah. You know, we were talking the other day, kind of laughing. The mindset used to be, well, I'm saved, I'm over the finish line. Where in reality, it's, I'm saved, I'm at the beginning. The race now starts. It's not the end of the race. It's the beginning. So how we follow the pillar. Oh my gosh, and think about it, if we're supposed to become like our God and he walked as a pillar, then those in those in Philadelphia will become like their father, a pillar.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just thought that was kind of cool when looking at that and where it's placed. Yes.
And the pillar that the Lord had in the wilderness was to keep the bad and the good separated.
Ooh.
And it's exactly what we will be the pillars to keep the bad and the good.
Yes.
Or not the bad, but the not as good and the perfect separated.
And that's where the pillars are on the outside. Yes. And there's I can't find it, a size description. Okay, if y'all find it, please let me know, because I read it and maybe I just moved, but I can't find a specific size of the pillars. Like very specific inside. Now, it's going to be the height of the curtain, but width, I don't seem to see that. So again, it makes me think of what a great representation of our individuality being able to be brought in and used.
Yeah, very good.
Anyway, all right, so another little thing kind of like that. I'm not getting very far this week, obviously, because we're going to go to 35:1. 35:1 says, "And Moshe assembled all the congregation of the children of Israel and said to them, these are the words which Yahweh has commanded you to do." And then he goes and talks about the Sabbaths. So, we talked about, I'm pretty sure in previous years, we have talked about ecclesia. And in chapter 32 is the first time we really see that. Ecclesia is the Greek word for ka'al, which means to gather.
Right.
But then we have under that, so in this verse we have, and Moses assembled, okay, that's the ka'al, which is the assembly. But then it says gathered all of the congregation. And that word is Edah, I'm not saying it right, it's E-D-A-H, that's the spelling of it. And that is a feminine word, but it comes from a root that's really never used.
Okay.
That is a masculine, which is ed. And I thought, oh, how interesting, because out of the masculine, the feminine's being pulled. Now, here's why. Let's talk about this word ka'al and assembly. We always talk about that as meaning the chosen ones, but why? Why do we say that? And then I kind of dug into it a little bit more.
Okay.
And I'm like, well, I totally get it now, even more so. The first time we see the word together is in chapter 32 of Exodus, where the people gathered themselves together, okay, for the sin of the golden calf.
I thought that's where we were going with that.
But the next time we see it is in 35:1. Now Moses is calling.
So that's different.
Yes. Every time you see the people calling, we see it again in Numbers. In 16, when they're basically going to go try to kill Moses. Every time we see the people calling, something bad happens. Poor decision. But every time Moses calls,
It's good.
it's good. And then I thought, well, okay, could this be a pattern? Because when we call ourselves as a congregation or church, we call ourselves, nothing good can happen because it's not according to the Lord.
Right.
But when the Lord calls us, hence the called out ones, when the Lord calls us, then it's all for good.
Yeah.
So then I thought, I have no idea. This is again just thinking, what if a part of Moses striking the rock the second time and getting in trouble had to do with this, a part of this? Because he called them all, and every time Moses calls them all, nothing negative is supposed to happen. It's totally representing Messiah.
Right.
So in him calling and then striking the rock, not only is it possibly, well, we know it's showing the wrong example to the people, but could it also be that the fact that he called them out and then he misrepresented? In other words, it's not just that he represented, that is it, but it's even in the meeting place in which he did it. Like, you don't go into his house and do that.
Right.
And so, I don't know, I started seeing more and more, yes, with this calling out, that it's the calling out. Who's calling you out? The people calling you out for mob rule, or is the Lord calling you out? And we see them both used, and we see that consistently when Moses calls out, it's representing the Lord and good things happen. And consistently when the people call out, it's to do negative and it's not good. So we want to be called out by the living God, not by people. So we have to be careful about that. Just in our everyday worship, in our congregations, we have to really be careful that the congregation, just of that group being together, who's leading it really? You know, is it man's ways leading it, or is it being led by the Lord through man? Does that make sense?
Yes. Very good.
All right. So, like I said, we weren't going to go very deep into it this week, just because.
I thought that was great.
Oh, well, I meant like further into, like, we're not talking about 38, you know, anyway. But just some things to chew on, kind of care, or get a little healthy thing into your tummy while you read the rest of this Torah portion. Please recognize that while you're reading maybe some things that repeat, that everything that's repeated is for a reason, and the Lord is using this. So realize that while we may not think it's important, we better realize it's very important, because He's taking the time to repeat it for our learning, because this will be brought again before us in the end times, and we'll need to be able to understand it.
Very good.
We thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week. Oh, no. We will see you next week, but we'll see you on the flip side with Julian X.
Shalom.